That's one fine-looking
fourth version of this classic gaming series.
Why doesn't mine look like that?
Artist Mark Flynn. That went really high.
You didn't say the artist Mark.
Yeah, I know, because there's not enough space for it. The tagline to Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, can pretty much be applied to any video I make about a trending topic. And I can't lie, this hurts me deeply. A few weeks back we had a brand new Crash Bandicoot game announced after much hype, teasing and quite literally waiting. Personally, I think the game looks great. I never used to be a huge Crash Bandicoot guy, never really got the appeal if I'm honest, but I played tons of the characters' games last year, including the original PlayStation trilogy and the remastered versions on Steam. I loved the fast-paced frantic gameplay, the style of the character all round, and found that there was particular charm in both Crash 2 and 3 that wasn't present in the remaster to the same extent. Decided on this version as the best designed iteration of the character across the whole series. In reference to that video I made, I've reused the intro from that video so many times at this point that I'm sure the act has become stale. So yeah, I'll do something different this time around. Screw it. But given this video was relatively popular, requests have flooded in for me to do this video today, following up with a look at this new design. I say flooded, I think probably 2 people have requested it. I am a viral sensation. Goofing off aside, I'm super excited to break down this new Crash design today, as at a first glance it's seemingly learnt from both my Crash and Spyro videos comparatively. Immediately there is a striking difference between Crash 4 and N. Sane Trilogy. The art style itself has completely changed, which I can't lie, did come as a shock to me. It would have been very easy for Activision to make a new game in this same style, and I am unbelievably happy that this isn't what happened, so an A for effort there at least. There's a level of polish and incredible amount of quality in the announcement trailer that definitely deserves to be commended. I mentioned my Crash and Spyro videos earlier on, and that is because between them both, I mentioned how both games handled the graphics for their remasters differently. Crash opted to go with a pseudo-realistic approach with its environments and graphic style, specifically the furs and textures on the surface of the Bandicoot himself, whereas Spyro went for a much more toon, almost cel-shaded style of graphics, less rooted in realism and more in fantasy, which was perfect for the world of dragons that Spyro himself resided in. It was this art direction that made the reignited trilogy Spyro an easy best design choice for me, whereas Crash left me feeling conflicted. Toys for Bob, who were responsible for the Spyro remaster, have actually taken the helm on this new Crash Bandicoot game, so I guess it's not a shock that they've done something similar here, because ooh boy, this game has style coming out the wazoo. What does that mean? Doesn't matter. Before we kick off today, I'd like to thank Skillshare for sponsoring this episode. If you're not familiar with Skillshare, I've covered them a lot in the past, specifically how I've used their courses to hone my graphic design and animation skills. They are an online learning community with tons of courses available, and I'm still brushing up on my creativity with each month I use my membership, blasting through courses at 1.5 times speed like an absolute learning enigma. This month I've continued on from what Skillshare taught me about designing my own logos, and have begun to look at how I could take this design further. I looked at the course, How to Easily Animate Logos in After Effects by Jaden, and it again stunned me by how easy it was to approach learning a new skill in this format. The course taught me how to break down my logo into multiple layers for importing, basic animation principles, and the importance of keyframes and animation smoothing in After Effects. By the end of the course, I was so happy with what I'd created, I decided to use it as an intro in my videos going forward. Skillshare is super affordable with a yearly subscription costing less than $10 a month. Today, I've got yet another 2-month free premium membership for the first 1,000 people, but use the link in the description below. So if you've got some time spare and would like to learn something new, I'd really recommend giving Skillshare a go so you can explore your creativity. Thanks for listening. Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time is absolutely littered with style. Bright lights, huge angular shapes, and crazed angles make up each level and colourful landscape, looking like a wacky cartoon adventure. The world feels like it has been built with Crash's persona in mind, and like Spyro Reignited did with Spyro, this style of graphics blends absolutely perfectly with Crash, given the locales we've seen so far. I'm willing to bet that we'll see plenty more levels that make the best use of this zany graphic style. But how has this huge difference in art direction affected Crash himself? Well, the changes aren't just via art style, as there are a number of key differences within his base design too. To start with, there have been changes made to the colour and texture of his fur. This Crash is much brighter and lighter than his N. Sane Trilogy counterpart. Rather than being rendered with semi-realistic fuzz with a dark tone like N. Sane, this Crash is a lighter lighter shade of orange with a render style that looks far more solid than fluffy. I guess it's a little bit similar to his Skylanders rendering style, but this feels far less rigid than that model did. Also, his pink skin-like lips and mouth have been replaced by a lighter tone of fur that starts at his stomach and follows him up to his mouth. His teeth are also suitably more fang-like, which I won't lie is quite a nice change from his dense human-like teeth of the remake. Other body parts such as his ears have also seen a suitable size upgrade. Outside of his features, his outfit has also received a slight change up. He has new jean shorts which make use of two different mesh-like textures. They kind of remind me of basketball shorts, and whether intentional or not, that's definitely a choice of clothing that I think fits his persona pretty well given his freedom of movement and chilled vibe. His sneakers retain the red look and laces from Insane, albeit in a slightly more high-top fashion, and in another subtle change, his gloves appear to be larger and looser around the cuff, which again is another choice that I think complements the loose nature of Crash as a character. All of these changes make for an incredible piece of key art which goes side by side with the in-game look and feel of Crash in a way that doesn't jump out as a regular. Compare this to some of the art present in Insane Trilogy versus the in-game model. Obviously they are the same design, but there's a jarring disconnect between the art style of the game and the way it was promoted. Not a big deal to many, I'm sure, but it irks me aplenty. The emotion shown off by this Crash by comparison in this trailer, specifically bigger and wilder facial expressions, feel a lot more natural as a result of these changes. The design almost feels like a blend of Crash's classic design and the one present on the box art of Twinsanity. While Twinsanity didn't really do much for me on the whole from what I experienced, and the in-game graphics are from that awkward era where it's almost impossible for games to age gracefully unless you happen to be cel shaded or get a HD remaster. The changes made to Classic's core design here, specifically the colour palette, swapped for the fur and muzzle, can't be ignored as a key change that probably should have stayed with the Bandicoot rather than reverting back to the odd blend of orange and pink. It's definitely the best design to draw from, whether intentional or not. Thank God it's not tribal tattoos. Overall, I absolutely love the look of this game and am in equal amounts of love with Crash's new redesign. It's a tough one because I still absolutely love the character's PS1 origins, but I'd say at a first glance, this is easily the best Crash has ever looked. I say that so confidently that I stare at my screen in dismay as a petition to change this actually exists. Cheers for starting this trend, Sonic. May this be your legacy going forward. Outside of the digital exclusive, totally tubular skins that I totally don't want to fire into the sun and pretend never existed, this Crash enters the fray as a bold new design that builds on the classic one, with modern and clever design changes that I think make him stand out as his own unique entity. He is a 50-50 split of nostalgia and freshness, paying homage to his roots whilst blowing our minds with excitement about his slight alteration through smart changes to his body and attire. He looks tremendous in the gameplay itself, whereas Insane Trilogy sometimes looked a little bit uncanny and stiff. This Crash feels like a free spirit with no limitations, and his fluidity makes his comical running and new wall jumping and grinding abilities a joy to look at. This main piece of key art is probably the best he has ever looked, giving off vibes equal part chaos, and it proudly exclaims that this is a new era for Crash Bandicoot. It's pretty beautiful, to be completely honest with you. I was happy to find out that this feeling of old and new combined is something that Toys for Bob specifically set out to achieve with this game. So I'd like to end with a quote from Canadian Guy A's exclusive interview with Toys for Bob's co-studio head and chief creative director, Paul Yan. Check out the full interview if you get the time, I'll leave a link in the description. One thing that was important to us was to make sure we set apart the aesthetics of the remasters from the aesthetics of the new game. We are trying to put a stake in the ground and set forth a new future for Crash. There's a lot that those games did right in terms of Crash's design, and so before we jump into what are the changes, we wanted to preserve a lot of things about Crash's silhouette. Crash is very angular, there's an expressiveness that came with him. Naughty Dog's original inspiration was Looney Tunes, so we wanted to go back to that source and make sure that the model we were creating had the capabilities to push that type of aesthetic to get that Chuck Jones look in our character. Then we've got a very specific aesthetic that we apply more broadly to the entire world, and the way in which we utilise the game's engine's renderer. So for us to get into that art direction side of things, we wanted to make sure that our shapes were really bold and clear, and we want to play with those in really zany ways. We want to reduce the amount of texture and high frequency texture detail so that you have more pleasing, softer gradients that are just easier on the eye. So we learned a lot from the Reignited trilogy in terms of how do you keep reverence to the original design that came before us, but still providing something new that sparks some freshness to balance the familiarity at the same time. All in all, I'd say they've succeeded with their aims to reinvent Crash in a brand new, exciting way. Now, I just can't wait to see how the game itself turns out. At the moment, I think it's looking like a blast. It's about time we had a new Crash in this style in our lives. Oh god, there's a mobile game as well. So that's my thoughts on Crash Bandicoot 4, but what do you think? How do you think the game is looking? And are you a fan of this new redesign? Let me know in the comments section below. This was a little bit of a different style of video today, and I really hope you all enjoyed it. I put so much pressure on myself recently with the channel, and despite plodding along with things in the background, there are some really cool videos coming up down the line by the way. Being in lockdown has really been a challenge for me and the way I work as a creator. I think I'll be busting out a few more quicker videos like this one for my own sanity going forward. It's a great way for me to experiment with more light-hearted content. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs down if you didn't, and please do subscribe if you're new here and you liked what you saw. At this time, I'd like to thank my patrons who help make videos like this possible, with a special shout out going to Doug Slade and Proggy Froggy, who are donating at the top tier. If you'd like to support the growth of this channel, please consider doing so on Patreon.